Welcome to our ninth session of our virtual workshop. Our speaker for today, this is his second time for the session. We all know him, Mr. Dinc Uvendire. And today he will be talking about the part 2 of creativity, which is about
creativity in advertising. I just want to recap very quickly my first session. I was focusing on the creativity in general, and it was not a domain only for the creatives. So I was telling it's an advantage in any business area that makes our product better, our offering better and different than the others. Our job is not advertising. Our job is human mind. Our job is people. Advertising is just a way to get to the human mind. So our media is the human mind. Did you ever enjoy like TV commercials, or did you ever wait for the TV commercials? Especially in my teenage years, I remember that advertisements were fun. I realized that it's the case for the whole world, that ads were more enjoyable than most of the content on TV. Colorful personalities, happy, entertaining, smart, funny. Maybe that's why we called the commercial break, because it was a break from all the drama that you saw on the media. Comedians used to write scripts. Creativity in advertising used to be great, and now it isn't, if you realize. So the question is, what went wrong? What I think what went wrong is the people got hypnotized by complexity. Pretty much what's going on with all creativity at the moment. People are hypnotized by creativity. In fact, everybody is so hypnotized by complexity, they've lost their ability to even think. I'll give you an example. This story takes place in New Zealand in November 2014. It's very interesting. A couple just bought the most modern car they could find, a Mazda keyless car. This car did everything. It let you in the car as soon as you get on. It adjusted the temperature, the air conditioning. It worked GPS on. It could self-park, the rain sensors. Imagine the most modern car you could get that time. Things you couldn't even think of all worked with this card. So a man and his wife getting on the car. He goes to start it. He says, "I left the car in kitchen." And wife says, "How are you going to get it? You can't get out of the car. You ain't got the card." And he says, "Christ, you're right." So he starts pressing buttons, nothing works. He starts beeping the horn to attract someone's attention. But because it's November the 5th, it's a public holiday and celebration going on, fireworks and all that, party. Nobody pays attention. Everybody thinks it's part of the celebration. So after hours of hours, he's pressing the horn and all through the night. And eventually, hours later, like 8 hours later, there's the lack of air in the car and the wife passes out. He's trying. He leans over to the back seat. He gets the jack from the back seat, trying to break the window to get out of the car. He can't break the window. Now it's morning. It's 12 hours. He manages just weakly, wave his hand to a neighbor passing by. The neighbor calls the police calls the ambulance. They take him and wife to the hospital. They have been there for 13 hours. They just were half an hour from suffocation because they couldn't get out of the car. Now, what never occurred to him was to try the door handle. That's the kind, what I mean by hypnosis of complexity. Everything is so wonderful and we forget now to use our brains. It occurred to him as if it had to have the card even to get out of the car. But if he just tried the door handle, the door would open. So this complexity, let me a little bit elaborate on it. I mean, we creative people especially are really confused about what our job is. Are we doing native advertising? Are we doing storytelling? Are we doing content curation? Are we doing crowdsourcing? Are we doing cross-channel, cross-device mobile optimized? Are we doing the big data wearable tech? Are we doing branded content? Maybe we are doing SEO, CRM, CSR, CTR, CMS, UGC, KPR, or ROI. The only 3 letters missing is WTF. We've forgotten how to think. Einstein said, if you can't explain it to an 11-year-old, you haven't really understood it. Stupid people think complicated is clever. Smart people know you have to go beyond complicated to get to simple. So in creative terms, what would creativity in our business look like? Explained real simply by Bill Bernbach, the man who invented good advertising, said, it may well be that creativity is the last unfair advantage we are legally allowed to take over our competitors. Try to understand this. Creativity is the legal unfair advantage. However you create, however you manufacture that, however you find that. Now, truly, it's not just in advertising. It's in football, it's in war, it's in business, it's in anything you want. It's a legal unfair advantage. It's a great definition of creativity, in my opinion. Another person that I admired a lot, Dave Trott, he puts this as upstream thinking. It's taking a problem you can't solve and getting upstream of that problem. Upstream meaning a river downstream that you go with the flow. When you go upstream, you will go against the flow. And if you go upstream and then you change the problem into a problem that you can solve. To give the example that he gives, which I love. Imagine two explorers walking through the jungle and they hear a tiger roar. They hear a tiger running towards them. And one explorer gets down and starts putting on a pair of running shoes. And the second explorer says, "What are you doing? You can't outrun a tiger." And the first explorer says, "I don't have to outrun the tiger. I just have to outrun you. You can't solve a problem of running a tiger, but going upstream of it. A tiger only has to eat one person, and it doesn't have to be me. It makes you change the problem." So that's creativity. That's upstream thinking. Yeah, so in advertising terms, what's the problem we need to solve? Okay, so in the UK alone, every year 18.3 billion pounds is spent on all forms of advertising and marketing. Of that, 4% is remembered positively, 7% is remembered negatively, 89% isn't noticed or remembered at all. So what do we think the problem might be? You know, everybody concentrates on the 7% that is remembered negatively. At least that's remembered, at least that has a chance of working. It's the 89% that isn't noticed or remembered. That's the problem. If you think that 89% is a 17 billion pound wasted by so-called experts. Obviously, we don't understand the media. Obviously, we don't understand what we are doing. We've got the media wrong. So let's get back to basics and look at what the media is. So if we had a whiteboard here, it would be so simple. But I tried a little bit and tried to draw it frame by frame. So here we go. That's the consumer. History of media. We started off with painting on walls, cave painting. That was one way to get to the consumer. Then it changed. We went into frescoes and oil painting. That was another way to get to the consumer. Then we discovered photography. Then we discovered cinema, TV, film. It keeps changing. We find different ways to get to the consumer. Then we discovered digital, social media, and the experiential. We're going to soon discover whatever the next thing is that's going to kill all other media. So do you notice one thing on here isn't changing? One thing on there that's never changed. That's the media. Everything that is changing, that's not the media. That is what stupid people think the media is. This is why billions of pounds, dollars get wasted every year. That's all maybe very trendy, very complicated, but the point is, if you put any rubbish in there, it won't work. Facebook doesn't press a button on itself and pass it itself on, or the Twitter doesn't pass itself on. There's always a person behind that presses that click. And I remember, like, when I was a school kid, I passed on jokes. I did it by word of mouth. I passed songs. I did it by giving my friends cassettes. You know, nowadays I might do it on WhatsApp. But what I mean, you pass on good ideas. He passes to him, he passes to him, and the person passes to another person. So what's been passed is good ideas, and that's how things go viral. So this is the media, guys. If you learn how that works, again, the Bill Bernbach said, our proper study is simple, timeless human truths. That's our media, simple, timeless human truths. So if that's our media, the human mind, how does the human mind work? We notice power in simplicity and weakness in complexity. So let's keep it simple. Every interaction you're going to have in your life, from the day you're born until the day you die, basically consists of three things. It's like a funnel, it must work in that direction. You must have an impact, you must have communication, and you must have persuasion in the same direction, this way around. If you can't, if you don't have an impact, you can't have persuasion if no one hears what you said. You can't have a communication if no one hears what you said. Then you can't have persuasion if no one understood what you said. Now, here, the impact seems like the most important thing. Without impact, none of the remaining is working. So you've got to have impact, because otherwise nothing happens. Because if there is no impact, nobody pay any attention to what you have to offer. But only impact on its own is like a hand grenade going off with a lot of noise, but you don't know what it wants. So the communication is also important. You need to speak the same language of the person, and then you need to persuade your audience with an offer or whatever. So you've got to have impact, it's got to communicate, and it's got to be persuasive. And this is applicable to everything from the day you're born till you die, and it's in your normal everyday life. To give you an example, like if I'm sitting at home watching a football match on TV and I want a cup of tea, but I don't want to interrupt the game, I don't want to leave the match, I want my wife to make a cup of tea. So how do I get my wife to make me a cup of tea? It's like, I can't sit here and wish for it. I've got to have a gut and get on her radar. So I got to say, sweetheart, sweetheart, sweetheart. Then she'll say, yeah. So I've got an impact. Now she doesn't know what I want. I've got to say in a language that she understands to make me a cup of tea. Make me a cup of tea, please. So I've got communication covered. I got no persuasion yet. I've got to think why she should do that. I know she doesn't like putting the garbage out, so I'll say, all right, make up a tea now, and when the game's over, I'll go and put the garbage out. Now, if she thinks that's a good deal, I'll get a cup of tea. I'm going to say it. So can you think any reason why any advert have those three things in it? Well, there's never going to be a brief that says we don't want impact or communication, we only want just persuasion. And if you look around and if you see the ads on the TV and everywhere, yet pretty much every advert you see doesn't have a communication. They don't communicate. Sometimes they have impact, but there's no persuasion. So there's no, next. So you'll see people, I didn't understand what the ad was about, but I like the kitten in it. So how does the impact work? That is something that we call Gestalt. I mean, some of us, the art people, might have studied in the art school. I'll give you a simple version of it. But before I talk about Gestalt, let's have a commercial break. Which commercial stands out more? Is it that circle, or is it the first one, or is it this one, or is it the seventh one? We all know that it's the X, right? So why does that X work though? Because your brain is a pattern-making machine. That's very interesting. It makes patterns. It groups everything, what it sees. Freud says when you're born, when you're a newborn, you're in a state called it. If you've got any kids, you can see it yourself. So when you are in a state called it, all you are is everything. It's just awareness. And you don't know there is a you. What you do is you bite everything. You bite your fingers, you bite your toes, you bite the blanket, you bite your toys. Gradually you work out. So if it hurts, it's me. If it doesn't hurt, it's not me. Because the mind is binary and it's grouping into things like 0 and 1, up and down, left and right, black and white. That's how we work with things really fast. This is what the mind does. So, the advantage to our advertising field, to us, the advertisers. So if you think if this was the human mind and these are our commercials, and I have 20 commercials in this mind. So what's the share of mine if I got in percentages, 1 out of 20? It is 5%, right? But we know the mind being a pattern-making machine, separating things off into groups. If I do this, suddenly, if I put an X there, Because what the mind does is it separates the circle and everything that looks like a circle into one group, and everything that doesn't look like it into another group. So now I've got two groups. I've got 50% of your mind just by being different. So this is very interesting and very powerful of, being different. So if you control the context, you control the human mind, which means you control the question, like in the example of the tiger and the two explorers. There's another example, which is we can even do it as a test here, but if you ask people, let's say a room of 100 people, and you ask the people who was the 44th president of the USA, you might get 1% of hands raised in the room. But if you ask a different question and say, who was the first black president of America? Then you might, get everybody raising their hands. So it's the same person, different question. So here you don't change the product, you just change the question. Now that's because he's not frightened to try the door handle, the person who asks this question, who changes the person. And we shouldn't be frightened to try the door handle as well. We shouldn't be hypnotized by complexity. We shouldn't walk out thinking it's got to be digital or it's got to be complicated. No, we should think, how do we control the human mind? Everything else will fall into place. Forget the complexity and try the door handle. Dave Trott said, our job is to stand out, to provoke, to get noticed and get remembered. Our job is impact. This is for the creatives. So I made it quite fast, I think, I was like, shall I continue? I have some examples of some, some things from the past and something from the near past. So I think I've done something around 20 minutes now, or what do you think, guys? Are you interested in seeing some more? I can stop here.
Keep going.
Proceed. All right. Thanks.
Very interesting.
I have some showcases. I picked a couple, not so many, but a couple. And maybe the first one that it's really interesting and worth studying is this ad. I'm sure most of you saw this somewhere, somehow. When I saw this in the college, it didn't make so much sense. It was okay. But, when I worked in the industry and, know the dynamics, and when I go back and understand that context, the situation, what they have been, going through, it was truly revolutionary. This ad is considered that it changed advertising. So it's the Think Small campaign, Volkswagen. It's the same guy, Bill Bernbach, that I'm, referring to, is behind this ad. So to understand this ad well, we need to go a little bit back. So up until the early 20th century, the primary job of an advertiser was to buy and sell space in a newspaper. Like a real estate agent, ad agents were basically, buying and selling spaces in the newspaper. Eventually, the clients started asking the advertisers not to just buy space, but to write the advert too. The first advertising products were mostly snake oil enamels, and these were basically colored water. So the advertisers had a lot of advertising budgets, but the people were not so happy about the product. Until today, there is this image perception about advertising, they don't believe in your products somehow. So it's originated from those years. It's a funny info. But the scene changed a lot after the Second World War because the economy became increasingly, dynamic, and so there were so many products on the shelves. There was no more groceries anymore. It was supermarkets. You have to, self-serve yourself, meaning that a shopkeeper could no longer offer their personal recommendations. So advertisers were in the position to differentiate the products of their clients. During these times before the 1960s, some ideas that till today that we use were formed. Like one of them was unique selling proposition, USP. A person called Roser Reeves invented this term. The idea behind the USP is you find a benefit of your product that your competitor did not have. And you were like, oh, to hammer that benefit again and again. One of the most famous campaigns created by Reeves was for Anacin aspirin, the noisy and repetitive TV commercials. Just used to say, fast, fast, incredible fast pain relief. Of course, nobody remembers this ad. It's not that, fun to remember. The Reeves also had another belief that everything that had to be backed up by research and all the layout and copy had to be tested, and everything was based in theory. This had relaxed clients who liked using the textbook and didn't want to take risks on new and novel approaches. I am, getting these details to you because I find it fascinating how it is similar to the case today. It's as if like in 2020, we are back before the 1960s, where no client really tries to something, new and novel, and everybody wants to like play it really safe. And whatever they, approve is always have to be based on a logical rationale or a research or backed up by theory. So it's very interesting to see this, like as if the history repeats itself. Reeves believed also the only purpose of an ad campaign was to see the sales moving up, regardless of how that was accomplished. And he warned against creativity in advertising, calling it the most dangerous word in all of advertising. So as you can see, creativity didn't have any role, or it was not an important role during those times. But what happened was interesting. The psychologist started to, show his influence in advertisement, but maybe in the wrong way. The psychologists were laying the subconscious of the general public on the display, but the ad people were, exploiting this. So much of the advertising from the 50s, especially in vehicle advertising, used status to continue to drive sales and demand. To have the latest was to be modern. So advertisers depicted a world of stylish individuals enjoying perpetual happiness. Man, it's just Instagram today. It's unbelievable. It's all about status. It's all about the most up-to-date and the modern. So it was exactly like that way during the 50s. So as a result, the repetition coming from the Madison Avenue. Madison Avenue is being the street in New York where all the advertising agencies used to reside. The general public was beginning to switch off. The status anxiety the ads created was beginning to frustrate. There was a wall was being erected between the advertisers and the people. Breaking through that was becoming harder to do. Advertising needed a new approach, and Bill Bernbach knew what needed to be done. So when you research on the old ads, you will always see these, illustrations, happy families, all these status. So it was not just by coincidence. It was the trend. It was the only way to advertise the product. Are you watching the TV series called Mad Men? There's a Don Draper there, right? He's the creative director, Don Draper. What a personality. So Bill Bernbach, he's the original madman. Of course, I'm not going to talk about that, the personality, the conflicts, and what makes a TV series, more in advertising terms. He was in, different creative departments of big agencies like Grey. He was working with Grey, and he was so frustrated because of, how the industry worked and how little creativity had influence over it. In the earlier days, the creative department had little control over the end result. The account people would tell the copywriters what to write. The copywriters would hand their work to the art department so their words could be placed into a layout. Often the copywriters never met the person who ended up doing the art and the layout. The reliance on research meant that the creatives were little more than technicians. Bill Bernbach's philosophy seems obvious today, but it was revolutionary at the time. He really believed in conceptual-based advertising, which there must be an idea, and an idea became the crucial ingredient of an ad. So going back to the Volkswagen side of the things, it was also a little bit weird. So if you think of all those American muscle cars and the family cars and the big sedans and all that, small German car from the Nazi Germany after the Second World War, it was really the most difficult thing to advertise if you think about it. But the story of the Ferdinand Porsche, he had two dreams actually. One was building race cars, and one was a small everyday man car for the people of the country. And before the World War, Adolf Hitler, when he was, getting more power, he think of a car as a political tool, and he thought it's an essential element for the country's growth as a world power. So he was obsessed with an idea of a small, inexpensive vehicle for the people. There's a very interesting story of the Hitler and the Volkswagen, the Beetle. I'm not going to go into it. I want to focus on the ad, but Ferdinand Porsche designed the Volkswagen Beetle, and it was backed up by the Nazis' government funds. So after the World War, British took over the factory and they studied the car, and it was a really great product. So they fixed some of its imperfections. And even just by word of mouth, it started selling in America. Like it reached 100,000, units. So the other major manufacturers didn't ignore the market for small cars. So they started, to release their own cars. And this created a big problem for Volkswagen. So they had to do something they hadn't done before. They had to advertise. So they sent their representative to New York to visit some, ad agencies. His name was Carl Hahn. He visited many agencies at the Madison Avenue, but he was so disappointed with what they were showing to him. They were so eager to impress him. They had done plenty of spec work showing an illustration of a car on a beautiful driveway with a nice family standing admiringly around it. So Hahn was less than impressed with the mediocrity. And he ended up the offices of Bernbach. It's DDB, by the way. That DDB is from his name, Bernbach. He hadn't done any mock-up, no drawings. He had no concept for the ads for Volkswagen. His argument was that he didn't know the product well. But he showed the portfolio of the company and the ads that they have done for other clients before. So what struck Carl Hahn was the Bernbach's honesty. So they signed the contract, and he invited the team to Germany, to the factory, so they can know the product well. So they went to the factory, they saw the car is great, and it's an honest car. And then this famous ad appeared. I mean, everything was so different with this ad. So it didn't use any illustration. It used photography. It used sans serif font. It used a very different style of layout. But most amazing, it was his message. It was, all about what you really care in a, product. So it took attention. It was so different, and it was really communicating what, this product is and what your as a consumer needs about. And it was really persuasive. So when this ad first went out at the Madison Avenue, it was viewed with suspicion because it was like so alien. But people talk about it around the water cooler. The teenagers ripped it out of magazines and printed to their walls. It became temporarily more than just an ad. It became like, part of the pop culture. And today, these ads symbolize the anti-establishment, type of, feeling. And it's all about, it really presents a common sense instead of, this status and all this, modernity, the status. So DDB continued the Volkswagen campaigns and keep pushing boundaries. They kept up with inventive ways of showing cars, such as, floating on the water to demonstrate the quality of its welds. In some ads, they didn't even show the car, like the one on the right. It's, interesting. Maybe I can share this presentation with you later. And you can take a look at this. You can zoom and read the copy. It's educational. So here it was the creative revolution. The influence of this Think Small ad, it is like considered as it changed the advertising for good. And it's not just like, the use of the art direction or the fonts. It was not just about, copywriters and art directors working together. And before this ad, they were like really disconnected. It was one department and another silo, and they don't even see each other. Here it was like two different disciplines working together. And suddenly, it was not only, the features and the benefits of something, it was the tone of voice became an important role. Before I go to another example, Bill Bernbach is known with some of his ads, and one of them was Avis, Tries Harder campaign. So this is also an excellent way of showing a number 2 position in a product category into a sales advantage. Hertz was the biggest car rental company in USA by far, and Avis was the number 2. And the creative idea was turning the number 2 in a great product positioning, as in when you are number 2, you really need to try hard to satisfy your customers. So as a number 2 company, you cannot afford to make your clients wait. You cannot afford not to be nice. So it was like really a nice way of, changing the question, going upstream, example. So it really worked. And the art director behind all these layouts and the Volkswagen and its Helmut Kron is considered as the greatest art director of all times. Can you believe? If you look at these Avis ads, there is no company logo on them. So it was really revolutionary. Another example from very few examples from the 2000s. I picked these ones because I think we can somehow remember these. This was the Dollar Shave Club. It's an interesting product. It was something very new. It's a subscription service for affordable razors. So you pay $1 and you get, a shaving kit every month delivered to your home. And to advertise, it was very interesting. It was very different from everything else that you see. Its co-founder and chief executive, Michael Dubin, got an attention in 2012 with an online video. And Dollar Shave Club crashed the Gillette's party. It might be the best debut ad in our century. Before I show you the ad, this is how it used to look like for everything else. The Gillette, see the celebrities, Federer, Tiger Woods, Beckham. It's all these, fantastic looking man and their Gillette. So let's watch what the guy did. I might be wrong about the number, but it's viewed over 20 million or something. So it was an amazing reach. It went viral, obviously. And kudos to him. It became like a $1 billion company. It's from a small startup. He had a great idea, but really advertising, something being different really worked for him, right? If I go back to the others, he was really a fresh affair. I like, the one he says 9.99 goes to Roger Federer. It's a nice joke. Here's another one from 2013. So I'm sure you all know this. I want to play it one time. When people think about trucks, they typically think about big, massive things that sometimes disturb the flow of the traffic, and they are usually dirty as well. So for the Volvo trucks, the epic split with Van Damme, this video was published in November 2013. Till today, it's about 100 million views. It went really crazy viral. People really shared it, whether they are the customer or not. So when you are advertising for trucks, you really think like B2B, or shall we do a B2C, or then, so they really like break the norm and they did something totally different, and they really played on that human mind aspect as well. So here, how it was. The music, man, it's it's amazing. So of course, what a precision steering, right? Like crazy. This one is from 2015. So most of you must be aware the ad wars between Burger King and McDonald's. It's always the Burger King attacking McDonald's. So this is how it's been. They always mock the Big Mac, and it's very known. But for one time, for the World Peace Day, the International World Peace Day, Burger King sent an open letter to McDonald's. Let's see how it was. So that was the famous McWhopper. It won several awards, but more than winning awards, it really took people's attention. So it's fascinating when you see people trying, the offering themselves. And I like McDonald's response though. Okay, this is something that I don't think any one of you heard it, but I put it here intentionally because it's a great example, and it's very recent. It's only a month ago. Several Republicans, formed a political action committee called the Lincoln Project. Their aim was to sway voters away from the Trump in key states, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Florida. That was the objective. But they didn't have enough money to advertise in those states. So the first thing they did was to raise money. But how could they do that? Because they couldn't afford to advertise. So they turned out they didn't need to advertise everywhere. They just needed a very tight target. They made a single commercial from stock footage and ran it only once. The commercial was a spoof of Ronald Reagan's famous ad Morning in America, but this was one called Morning in America. Over the stock footage of dead bodies, empty streets, and people in masks, the voiceover said, "We played it for you. And now is the catch coming." So the commercial was only ever designed to run once, to an audience of one. But Donald Trump himself, he was watching the Fox News because they knew Donald Trump watched Tucker Carlson on Fox News. So that's where they ran the ad. And as they hoped, Trump did what he always does. He went wild on Twitter immediately. He furiously tweeted, "A group of rhino Republicans who failed badly 12 years ago, then again 8 years ago, and then got badly beaten by me, a political first-timer 4 years ago, have copied, no imagination, the concept of an ad from Ronald Reagan Morning in America, doing everything possible to get even for all their many failures." He immediately followed it with two more furious tweets. The commercial was only ever designed to run once, but Trump's 79 million followers on Twitter saw it, an amazing media coup for the PAC. The Trump camp immediately released a statement calling the pack scumbags, scum artists, boom feeders, political grifters, and washed up Washington swamp creatures, which of course made the Lincoln Project's commercial an absolute must-see. What could have goad Trump into such an collective fit of rage? Because of Trump's tweets, that single commercial got 17 million views. It immediately raised $2 million in donations from 25,000 new donors. That money will now pay for advertising to run in the key states that they couldn't afford before, the Wisconsin, Ohio, and Florida. And yet the airtime for that single spot cost just $5,000. So one member of the pack, George Conway, said, "We obviously got a lot of attention thanks to the president, and we are very grateful to him for that." So being able to target a single individual and provoke him into giving you many millions of dollars of free media is a brilliant move. You spend $5,000 on one spot, and the president is doing the job for you, so you can raise $2 million and you have your campaign ready. It also elevates the Lincoln, projects, makes them a serious, player in the minds of the Republicans as well. And a fantastic return on a $5,000 media spend. It's also known as a Streisand Effect. What is a Streisand Effect? A photographer once put a small coastal pictures online of her house was one of them. So she didn't want her house to be viewed by people, so he went and sued the photographer for $50 million. But when this went, public, and it was in the news, it was hardly known by anyone then. Now was viewed by 1 million people. So it's proving that it's often better just to shut up and ignore whatever is annoying you. So for years, Burger King has been trying to provoke McDonald's into answering back. It's advertising, it criticizes, Big Mac by comparing it against the McWhopper. And we wonder why McDonald's doesn't answer back. But McDonald's know as soon as they do, they are spending money to advertise Burger King. Just the way Avis provoked Hertz, just the way Pepsi provoked Coke, just the way Apple provoked Microsoft. So the smart thing for the smaller guy to do is try to provoke the bigger guy, while the smart thing for the bigger guy to do is to shut up. So what I said in the beginning, let me repeat it in the end. Our job is not advertising. Our job is human mind. Our job is people. Advertising is just a way to get to the human mind. So our media is the human mind. Thank you for your attention, patience for 1 hour, almost 40 minutes for me. Thank you. Well, yes. Enya, what a pick, right? What a pick of soundtrack. Everything was so out of the context. just by being different, but not only for sake of being different, you know, to communicate and to persuade as well. You really have a product, have a service that really adds value to the product. They didn't add any extra features on the truck. They didn't add any extra features on the Whopper. But by having an idea, they really moved people's, you know, attitude. And that's really adding value to a brand.
That was a great presentation, Dinch. One thing I just wanted to ask you, Dinch, from a marketing perspective, and also to highlight that to the, you know, like the team members in Dallah Holding Media that do marketing, the creative, the advertising creativity part that comes in the message creation, right? Like when you're creating the message to get out there.
Yeah, the message is, yes, it's one part of it. So if you think in what is the problem, the challenge, defining the challenge, and defining the correct answer to that is one part of, you know, the process.
Exactly.
And working on how to deliver that answer is another process. So the creativity is more about on the how part, the tone of voice, the impact, but obviously what the message is and what's the right answer, you know, that needs to be obviously given in a brief to the creative department, so you can then think, you know, what's the best approach, what is the best how.
That part falls a lot on the marketing people. The reason why I'm asking this is, you know, like from the ads that we saw and everything, they're great, they're really impactful, and you know, like you can relate to it, you can understand, and they give you an action, right? But the most important part before that, just like you mentioned, is to define the end goal, basically for the campaign. And that gets done with, you know, asking the question to the client what they're trying to get out of this campaign. You know, like it's, people usually jump on, oh, let's do social media advertisement, let's do Facebook, let's do this. But like you said, choosing media channels and all these things are really not the priority at the beginning. You need to understand, who are you talking to? What's your segment? What are you trying to reach at the end, and put measures for that. And after that, you work on the how, just like you mentioned, so we can be effective to those people. Otherwise, you end up doing an impact, like you said, like a big noise, but nobody knows what happened.
Yes, you're right. So if we need to distribute the responsibilities, let's say, so the first part, the impact part, is like mostly the creative department's problem. So the communication and persuasion, like you said, it's more about, you know, the marketing problematic. It's the accounts team's job. So if your ad doesn't communicate, don't fire the creative.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the communication, the persuasion, they really need to be studied. Like you said, you have to communicate. To communicate, you need to speak the language of the person that you communicate. Obviously, you need to study the person. Like that, Republicans, they knew what Trump would do. He would go wild on Twitter, and it was free advertising for them. So they played with that. It was so smart. And Burger King 100% knew that McDonald's would never agree, you know, to take part in it. They would never, you know, spend their millions to advertise Burger King. They were for sure knew it from the beginning. But, you know, they played, you know, with this, you know, the psychological or emotional, you know, intelligence, let's say, or if you want to put it in the different terms, it was emotionally efficient. You know what I mean? So because they studied the audience well and they knew what they had to, you know, send out the message, and the creative's role was just to find how, you know, how they could do that.
Yeah.
And it's really falling around how to be different.
It's really crucial that we get that first part, which is the marketing part. And this is kind of also direct to my team. You know, like getting the right answers, and probing the right questions to the client and getting the right answers. Otherwise, the creative work is just, you know, we're shooting into a dark room. If the brief is not correct and the segmentation is not correct and the end result and the measurement of what the client is trying to reach is not correct. A lot of the clients in Doha are not very well versed when it comes to understanding how media campaigns work. They usually come to you as like, I want to spend 2 million riyals. I want to be on all social media. I want to be on Snapchat and everything. And we kind of run behind them. Okay, cool. This is how much it'll spend. This is how much it costs on Snapchat and this. But the important question is, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to create awareness? Are they trying to convert new people? What's the percentage of those people? What kind of people are they targeting? Is it teenagers? Is it millennials? Is it older people? Because then the channels will be identified from that, and then the creative team can actually work on an impactful message in the right channel with the right message that can create that effect that we need. So really, that first part of getting it right, and who we are trying to talk to and everything, and what we're trying to do with them is very important for creative to work effectively and efficiently.
Truly, Ban. I mean, in Qatar, we are very much like the old America before the 50s. Clients, they don't want to take risks. They don't want to lose their seats. They always want to play safe. They can explain the safest ad to their bosses. And it's kind of like the mentality, like you are saying, among the clients. That's really important. But, in general, if you look at the world, I think as an industry, we are not too bad, in the communication and the persuasion part, especially in the persuasion part. And we are not short of promotions, incentives, the carrot. We are not short of the carrot. So we are like really creative, finding new ways, giving a new Toyota Land Cruiser and all this. And there is big research and, strategy people who can really, interpret a data that is available through this new technology. So they can somehow formulate the communication as well. But still in the impact part, the creativity part, there is still, a lack. And think about it. There is something called ad blocking. We have ad blockers installed in our systems, and there is a reason for that. We don't want to see any more advertising, no matter how well it communicates to me or how persuasive it is. I am not interested in seeing any more, crap. It's really rubbish. And really the only way to, outcome from it is to improve our impact part of that funnel, the creativity part, basically. And it's not just the role of creative department. Yes, it's the client, it's the mindset, it is us, all of us, even our finance department. It is all of us as a whole industry. We can only all together get out of, from this this loophole, basically. See, this is why I was so elaborate on that Volkswagen ad, because it's like a small episode of schooling, tells us, what happened, and then one person, one brand who has very little to lose, coming from Germany, a country that you defeated in the war, a product of Hitler, selling in America. And it's like, what are your chances really to be successful? So they didn't really have so much to lose. So he had some guts, And same thing for that person, Bill Bellma. He worked with big top agencies like Grey as creative director, but he was not happy what it was about. The ads were all about the account person was giving you what to say, the copywriter was writing, an art director in a different floor was putting the layout. It's like he was not happy from that at all. But it was very hard to convince anybody. It was impossible to convince your board of directors. That guy sent a letter to the Grey board of directors, and it landed on deaf ears. So he had to start his own agency. He suffered big time, but he had his principles somehow. He believed in what he was in his vision. And this ad, it's not the critics who liked it. The Madison Avenue didn't enjoy that ad at all. It was so against it. Experts alienated it. If you remember my old presentation, the Picasso he made an exhibition and it was criticized by all the, artists. And they said he was spitting turpentine on our faces. Nobody understood the value of that. But the people in the end, they realized the value of it. So once you have something like you believe in and it's a good product, so it really pays off. It pays off with the real value, with the real result. Also, it's not going to be easy, but we need to pick those, open-minded, or at least among our clients, once we have that open-mindedness, we should, really not to let them down and really pursue that opportunity. This is what I believe.
I agree with you 100%. And the clients they might push back in the beginning because it's something not normal that they know or that they're used to. But if we keep on pushing and asking these questions and pushing the boundaries with them, that's where our value will be created, to be honest, as a team overall in what we do. You might get shut down, but there's nothing wrong with asking the right questions and trying to change the status quo for the client.
And they need to see some real results. Yeah. And put yourself in their shoes. Okay, it might be just some agency's bullshit. You can really not know. You really need to see some results. Like that Volkswagen ad, it was the smallest budget ever. Like if you think Ford and Chevrolet, they were spending like billions of dollars on advertisement, and the Volkswagen came with the smallest budget ever. Even the ads were not in color; it was black and white. Simply, they didn't have the budget for it. So it was a very small account compared to everything else going on, like all the cigarettes, all the packaged goods. Imagine advertising those years, and who cares really for this small car running black and white ads? So it was really the principle and that the belief in that vision made it through, and that's why it's considered as the creative revolution. And look at it, guys. It was all different, but not like crazy different, right? It was still doing the job properly. So I feel like it really let individuals to do what they do good, best, in their own terms, but it was done in a certain discipline and with efficiency in a way. So,
yeah. Thanks a lot, Dinc. That was really an interesting presentation.
Great conversation. I mean, asking the right questions is more important than getting to the answers, right?
100%.
It is this, and changing the question can change the problem, like the example of the 44th president of USA. So you can really help your clients by asking the right questions. Maybe we can do a session just about the brief itself, or maybe we can do another session, something similar, creativity in marketing. And today I really focused on advertising because we have an advertising agency, we are representing an ad agency. That's the flagship company. That's what it started, Dallah. So,
for sure.
But we are not doing so much advertising compared to all the scope that we have. So I really, wanted to, bring back the advertising, spirit into us and in our dialogues with our clients as well. So let's not forget about it.
No, not at all. It's a very added value, Dinc, having the flagship Dallah advertising being part of DHM, even if there's not a lot of spend, like you said, happening and everything. And a lot of the clients we work with are more focused on earned media, which is events and stuff like that. But having a creative studio and an ad agency just adds more value to the client because we're tapping expertise in other channels as well, not only earned media, but also paid media. And we can advise them on their own media as well, the clients that they have. So it's actually very crucial and critical what you're talking about. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, from the people's point, when you see an ad on a TV, you think this one, like you think the people who's running this ad, they are really confident about their product. That's why they spend so much money on a TV ad. So when you go to the shelf, when you see that advertised product, you suddenly know that there's a big confidence and trust from the producers into that product, so they were not shying away from spending big bucks. So that's actually why till today the TV is a big media fighting against all the social media and all the digital online, because simply digital is so cheap, procurement loves it. But in the eyes of the consumer, when you see a TV ad or an outdoor ad, like subconsciously, like this product should be good, because the producers, they went the extra mile and they put it, on an ad. So, it's really psychology at the same time. It's not just, media planning with channel or distributing the budget. It's more about playing on those emotional factors as well. So,
yeah, I mean, if you have two lawyers and one of them is expensive and, and the other one costs pennies, I'm not going to go with the one that costs pennies because I have the psychological effect that I think this guy's not good. True. It's the same principle, yeah.